Hey everybody, you've reached Heaven's Help Desk. Welcome. This is where you ask questions and we answer them like we think people in heaven would answer them. I'm Curtis. Karen and Cara, welcome.
Thanks, Curtis. Happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. Looking forward to it. I love the questions that come in and the discussions we can have.
Let's get right down to it. Just so you know, if you haven't watched this before, these questions that we're about to read were all submitted by YouTube members of this channel or our premium tier membership, the Swedenborg Foundation community membership. So if you want to submit a question next time, consider becoming a member, and then you can. That's a perk. So that is a way for us to say thanks for supporting us. So everyone you see with these questions, know they're also making this content possible, and we thank them for that. All right, let's start with Keith. Keith is one of our members. He says, is fasting a correspondence to something spiritual? If anybody's brand new to Swedenborg or what we talk about on this channel, correspondence is a phenomenon that happens where the spiritual world influences the physical world and sort of displays itself in it. And this goes into everything, but is fasting one of that? And I would imagine what is fasting? What does that signify or represent? Yeah, Cara.
I just want to add I just want to say that also Swedenborg talks about the correspondences in the Bible, meaning practices and words and stuff in the Bible have a meaning, an inner meaning, some kind of symbolism or significance that isn't apparent on the outside. So I did look up fasting in my Swedenborg search engine, and if that search engine is to be trusted, the Swedenborg only uses the word 3 times in his huge collection of 30 books, and he was quoting somewhere in the Bible, and he said that a fasting soul signifies or symbolizes a desire to learn the goods and truths of faith. So figuring out what to think and how to live when you want to live in a faithful kind of way. And that's all I had to say about it. Otherwise, he was describing the people back in the olden days who used to fast, but that's what he has to say about it. And that was interesting to me because I think of fasting as a denying yourself, something. But this is to be in the state of like anticipation and wanting to be filled up is the way Swedenborg was looking at it. That was interesting to me.
Yeah, that's cool. Yep, I saw that one. I did find one other where he said it corresponds to being in mourning or grieving. Okay, so yeah, a desire, because they kind of go together. Like you're wanting something, you're wanting some goodness, and you feel deprived of it, and you're grieving because you're hungry. You're hungry for something. And I'm no expert on the ancient world, but it does seem like in the Bible there's descriptions of that was a ritual to depict mourning and grief and things, to fast. But also, and then I was starting to think, now Swedenborg doesn't go into this, but I was wondering about, like, in modern times, we think of fasting as a kind of cleansing, a health oriented thing that you can do voluntarily. And there is that, I didn't find Swedenborg commenting on this verse, but Jesus at one point talking about demons, that are in people. This kind only goes out with prayer and fasting, he said. And that got me wondering about, grief as a part of a spiritual cleansing, the ways that we could maybe think, why would a person do physical fasting in modern times? It might be to try to, just let the body cleanse a bit, trying to curb your appetite for a while and not have that control you, things like that are kind of helping make a more healthy discipline instead of being driven by cravings of to want to eat all the time. So when I think of it that way, it seems like it could correspond to that kind of thing in spiritual growth, like just like taking a pause on just sort of taking everything in that comes, but maybe just, just pausing and thinking like, what is healthy? What isn't? Let me just, something like that. So it's interesting. They seem to all related, like a desire for something good, sadness if you can't feel some good, but also a voluntary kind of abstaining from something to just for the sake of just taking a step back and trying to eat healthier or something. I don't know. What do you think, Curtis?
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of fasting in my life, but I did once. I did one. It was called the Master Cleanse. I don't know if you've heard of it, where you don't eat any food. The only thing you can do is you can drink this. It's sort of like lemonade, but it's got very particular ingredients in it. And you really wish you could eat food. So you really want to. And fasting is, even though I feel like I want to, I'm not going to do this. So it immediately made me think of regeneration, because speaking of correspondences, when eating is mentioned in the Bible, or even the act of eating in regular life, there's a counterpart to that in the spiritual side of existence, which is people there in the afterlife, according to Swedenborg, they're sustained by goodness. The same thing food does for your body, goodness does for your spirit, and then truth is like water. So goodness, I would think, is you experience it through pleasure. So the flip of that would be there's pleasures in things that are not good. So regeneration is like repentance, reformation, and regeneration is like you look at yourself and you say, well, there's the pleasure I have in doing this evil, so I'm going to fast from that. Even when it comes up, like I have a craving to do it, which is like I'm craving food, I'm going to say, nope, even though I could, I'm not going to do it. So to me, it feels like that's a bit of a fast, or regeneration itself is a bit of a fasting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, agreed. I like that.
Let's stay on this topic of correspondences and biblical correspondences, because our next question is from John Childs, who asks, in Luke 17, early on, Jesus talks about slaves doing what they ought to have done. Is this about truth supporting our goodness, maybe? So there's a part of the Bible, there's a couple passages in the New Testament that a lot of people find upsetting, because it seems to be condoning slavery. And even Jesus here talking about that. According to Swedenborg, this is all just like the fasting is symbolic, the slavery is symbolic. So we did a whole show on slavery in the Bible and how it's not actually about that. It's about something, everything in the Bible is about something inside. But what about this in particular? What do we think is the meaning of, why would Jesus bring this up?
Yeah, I like where John's mind went about this, because that is one of the things that Swedenborg wrote about, a symbolism, like a positive symbolism of servants or slaves. Even the wording in the Bible means just your ideas are supposed to serve love, like they're supposed to be in support of goodness and love, not to be calling the shots, but to serve. So I like that. But I found something different when I dug into Swedenborg about this particular set of verses. And I think I'll share what I found first and then read the 4 verses, because it's interesting to think of it that way. Because in the literal sense, it sounds kind of weird and a little kind of harsh what Jesus is saying, and sort of oppressive to people who are servants. But when you have this angle, it's like, oh yeah, that changes it all. So what I found in Swedenborg was that these verses it relates to the concept of, there's other times where Swedenborg is talking to the religious leadership or religious people who feel entitled, like the man praying in the street and to show how wonderful he is, and feeling entitled and more special than others because they're so righteous and so religious. And so when you think about that, so when Swedenborg would talk about that, and then he'd list this section as one of the biblical examples of that. That's not a good way to be. So listen to these verses of Jesus and think of it that way. And which of you, having a servant plowing or tending sheep, will say to him when he has come in from the field, "Come at once and sit down to eat"? But will he not rather say to him, "Prepare something for my supper, and gird yourself, and serve me till I have eaten and drunk, and afterward you will eat and drink"? Does he thank that servant because he did the things that were commanded him? I think not. So likewise you, when you have done all those things which you are commanded, say, "We are unprofitable servants. We have done what was our duty to do." And when it sounds weird and harsh when you just read it, but when you think of it, he's speaking to those who feel entitled because they're religious and they, like, I should get to come sit at the table and be served myself because I am special. I am doing all the right things. But Jesus is saying to them, which he's often, his wording will come across as the most harsh to those who feel religiously righteous, right? He's saying, you should just be doing what you're meant to do. You shouldn't think that, you should have a special treatment because if you are religious, you are supposed to be serving God. So that was just interesting to me. That changed the whole feel. And I think, that's what Swedenborg says this is about. It's about an attitude of religious entitlement and a little bit of think about that, people. You're not supposed to be thinking you should be getting all sorts of special treatment because of that.
That's your job. It's interesting hearing you read it, just even in the literal sense there. It seems to me pretty clear that Jesus is saying, how you guys do this? Well, shouldn't it be like that over here? I mean, I guess you could say he should have said, I don't know, uses the word servants in some translations. So, but if those people aren't being paid, don't you think he should say, you shouldn't do that? I don't know. But in that example, it seems to me like he's just saying, you guys you don't want to listen to what I'm saying. Well, how you do this.
Yeah,
you should do that. These people, you would all buy into the fact that no, that's what they're supposed to do, so they should just do it. Well, you are sitting here just doing what you're supposed to do and wanting all this special privileges just for doing what's required of you.
Exactly. He uses in parable, he uses examples that would mean something to them, that they could relate to, like that they'd say, "Oh, well, no, that isn't appropriate." So he's saying, so think of it that way. Like you're supposed to be serving. You're supposed to be a servant to the the love of God and the love of the neighbor and things like that. So don't think that means I don't need to serve. I need to be served or something. Yeah. So cool how Jesus will, and that's how God always is, like to take something that we could relate to, no matter what era we're living in, or that's what parable is about, like taking something earthly to convey a spiritual message, something we can relate to in earthly life. Yeah.
If what are we here for except for to speculate? So it seems like there is a lot of command and controlling going on in the Bible in all kinds of ways and places. And once you understand the bedrock truth that the whole Bible is a big, gigantic set of instructions for how your mind should be ordered, for how the human being should live, then most of that stuff is about having the right things in you in control and the wrong things not in control. I think you can, just taking broad, crude parallels, you have the children of Israel start out enslaved by Egypt. And so if there's a symbolism of the children of Israel in this story symbolize like the good part of us, the part that is in connection with God and wants to do good things. And Egypt is sort of the lower stuff, the more ego-filled stuff. It doesn't work when that stuff is in charge. So what you have to try to get to is where your base instincts, your negative thoughts and desires, they're there, but they they are under the control of the good parts of you. So I think that everything about servants, slaves, people conquering people, all these things is eventually within yourself. The place we're trying to get to is where, yeah, you still can have all that, you know, the crasser parts of you, but they have to be taken orders, and then everything works better for everyone, including the parts that are on the bottom.
Right. Yeah, I love that, because then your own lower impulses, if they get uppity and think, well, I don't want to serve those higher things, I want to just get fed myself, that's going to mess up your life. So,
well, I was noticing just recently, I was doing a bunch of scrolling on my phone of stuff that doesn't really matter. And because I was feeling like, well, I'm a little stressed right now. I need to relax, and I just got to take it easy. So I'm going to do this. And then I was realizing after a few sessions of that at different times, this doesn't make me more relaxed. I don't, now that I'm here and I wasted all that time, it doesn't make me feel better. There's a part of me that thinks it would, but if I just spent that time getting some of the things checked off my to-do list, that's when I feel good.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like that. Like that stuff doesn't even know what it wants. It thinks it's got these, there's parts of you that have these things that it craves. Like, I got to have this, but it doesn't know how to be happy. It doesn't know how to be happy. Only the higher parts of you know how to arrange it so that everything can be happy.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Let's take another member question. Leah asks, this is a long question, so I'll read it and then we'll have a summary of it on the screen. Apparently, it's not in Swedenborg's purview, mission, to focus on reincarnation, which enjoys widespread historical and traditional acceptance worldwide. I am wondering if his mission is to inform those who are having their, quote, final incarnation, as Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, well, we can argue about the pronunciation, has said, reincarnation is for the ignorant. That statement suggests that there is a final incarnation for the enlightened who has reincarnated countless times. Perhaps Swedenborg's mission is to address the level of reality where reincarnation is not an issue. Might this be an answer to an apparent paradox between Swedenborg and the rest of the special individuals like Steiner or many renowned masters? So yeah, you get down, you know, the whole Swedenborg sure does not have anything of substance supporting the idea that we reincarnate. That you, by reincarnate, I mean you've lived on this same planet before as a different person in a different time period and will return back to this planet after that. I think of it, and this is a split that happens not just with Swedenborg and other people. I think in the near-death experience world, I think there's a especially the early near-death experiences. From my perspective, reading them, reincarnation was stories of that were few and far between, and now there's quite a lot of it in a lot of them. So here she's saying, is it because Swedenborg is maybe talking to, you know, was it outside what he was allowed to talk about or what he was trying to talk about? So I'm interested how this strikes you both. But thanks, Leah, for sharing this possible explanation.
Yeah, I'll start by saying I do know of some Swedenborgians who do believe in reincarnation. So you're allowed to, if that makes sense to you.
We're gonna let you believe whatever you want to believe.
You certainly can. We always say, you know, in Swedenborg's works and things we share, you know, take in what makes sense to you. Things that you can't quite resonate with, set those aside for now, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So we just have to choose what makes sense. What I see in Swedenborg is he is offering an alternative explanation for things that people think are evidence of reincarnation or past lives. So we've talked on other shows about he has an explanation for why you might remember a past life, which Curtis often refers to as memory leaks, like because our minds are connected with many other minds of people in the afterlife, we sometimes can get a memory that is actually theirs, but it feels like ours. Also, there's this wild thing that Swedenborg talks about, that sometimes our associate spirits, the spirits that are closest to us, can for a time feel that they are us. So like they are living our life. And so I wonder if that kind of plays in to that whole, thinking you're another person or something. No doubt there are many people in the afterlife, whether or not there is reincarnation. No doubt there are many people in the afterlife, in the world of spirits, that do believe in reincarnation. So if you're getting in touch with those spirits and you get told there's reincarnation, it's not necessarily a proof that there is, if there are people in the afterlife that believe it, because there are actually people in the afterlife who believe they haven't died yet. And, there's all sorts of beliefs going on in the world of spirits level, as people are sorting out things that are the closest to our minds. But for me, the strongest thing, which, because I did consider for a while, might that be possible? But for me, it doesn't make sense in that, because it seems like for the reincarnation theories, the main thing is we need to have more chances to come back here and work through our stuff and correct mistakes in our spirit and things. And I think there are people I've talked to that do believe in reincarnation that have an idea that like heaven is a place you can go, or paradise or whatever, and it's lovely, but it just gets boring after a while, and you just don't have anything new and interesting or progress more. Whereas Swedenborg says a very different thing, that in the afterlife, you by no means stop learning and purifying and purging and progressing, that he paints the afterlife as a very active life with many levels that you continue to go forward in which, yes, you work through your stuff, and you even have more clarity on what needs working through. And so it's like a idea of a continued spiral of evolving your spirit, rather than having to come back here and not remember anything about your last, I was watching a movie once about reincarnation, and the people were in the afterlife, and they were saying, my life on earth, still didn't get it. And so they didn't have the benefit of remembering what they learned last time. I don't understand all the different theories, but that was struck me like, it just doesn't make sense. So this way that Swedenborg presents, you retain what you've learned and you keep going, you build on that. So it just makes more sense to me. But again, you have to choose what makes sense. And I know a lot of people get a lot of comfort out of the idea of reincarnation. So I would never want to take that away, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I always think of the part that I got stuck on is that recycled soul. Like, who is it? Is it the person who wasn't 600 years ago, or is it the person that was, in World War II, or is it the person that's going to be in the year 2090? Or, I mean, I'm very attached to the idea, but it's just my choice of believing that when a baby's born, that is a new soul, and that's an individual, and that person remains an individual from here on to the next life. But I grew up with Swedenborg, so that's why that's how I see it. But I don't know. I'm very attached to that idea that each person is an individual, a one and only.
A precious.
I could be wrong about that too. I don't know.
I like how you put it in the beginning, Karen, that Swedenborg is an alternate explanation for it. Mm-hmm. That and kind of a clean one, because there was little to no discussion about reincarnation, as far as I can understand, in Europe at the time. So there wasn't, like today he'd be asked, like, what's your position on reincarnation? Whereas back then there wasn't that. So he's not influenced by that either way. So yeah, I think what some what Swedenborg gives you is, here's an alternate explanation, just like with is it Newtonian physics or is it quantum physics to explain the same world that we're looking at? I think that people seem to undeniably have these experiences where either they can see into what they would say are past lives, or there'll be some kids born who know about some plane that went down in World War II, and they can go show them the spot. And I think people who don't believe at all in spirit stuff or reincarnation might not know what to do with that. They just ignore it, or just okay, whatever. This is whereas people who believe strongly in reincarnation say, well, yeah, you experience that because that's who you were. But Swedenborg, has this third way, which is essentially that stuff is very fluid in the afterlife, that you can, like, we're approaching that here. And now the example I always want to bring up is like, one of my wife's friends was talking a long time ago. I just heard about it, but she was like telling them, you guys remember when we all did this and we went over here and did that? And eventually they're like, what are you talking about? And eventually they realized, oh, that's an episode of the show Friends that you thought, like, we didn't do that. So now you can watch a show in virtual reality and it seems much more real. But the spiritual world is to the point where you can experience things as your own that were never your own. I know that he talks about this directly with knowledge. He says, and with people, that you get to your community in heaven, and he says, it seems like you had known them from earliest childhood. But he says the actual thing you're experiencing is you're so similar in spirit that it induces familiarity in you. The knowledge that you get there, you suddenly come into the knowledge of the community and feel like you've already known that before. So he had sort of a meta look at it, as well as saying, that sometimes the spirits around you, usually they don't know they're with you, but sometimes their memory leaks into you. And he says right there, that's why some people believe we have these past lives. So of course I can't sit here and know which one is true, but it's a service to the general public to say, no, here's two full spectrum solutions to this quandary of people having these experiences of things that aren't part of their life on this earth. So I like that as what Swedenborg does. And I like the idea of giving the viewers that come through here, well, here's another explanation for what could be going on. So
I just want to add that it's great. I want to bring it back to choose what makes the most sense, because like Cara, I have become I love the idea that we're each just this precious individual that starts and then continues on. But please, everybody, make sure what makes sense to your heart. And the last thing I want to say is I had this experience not too long after my daughter, Curtis's older sister, died, and I was, for a while, I went into a panic one time when I was in the car saying, what if this is for me? So what if reincarnation is real and she's off becoming a different person and I'll never see her again? And it was really filling me with panic. But right at that instant, I felt her presence kissing my cheek and saying, it's okay, Mom, I'm right here. And that's all that was said. So I think it's like whatever is the truth is great. And love wins. And
so I was once invited to be a guest on a show that was for parents who had lost kids. And the host asked me, because I was telling him all about Swedenborg and afterlife, and the host asked me, did Swedenborg believe in reincarnation? And I get that from time to time, and sometimes it's kind of an awkward question because Swedenborg, I do think everyone should go check out our show that says, Do We Reincarnate? It's called Do We Reincarnate? I think we did a great job kind of parsing out all the ins and outs of that. But in general, it seems like he indicates, or you don't find in his works support for reincarnation. So I was like, all right, I'll just say it. Maybe people in this group, the parents group who lost kids, will not like that. But so many people wrote in and like, oh, thank God, because everywhere else says that there's reincarnation, and they had the same fear that you had. which is that their kid that they lost is they're someone else now. So I kind of like us being out there doing the Swedenborg thing. Is to say you now have freedom, everybody, because even if there's people who have these experiences of past lives, this is an alternate explanation of how you can be. You can see that movie, but it doesn't mean you were the original one living it.
Yeah.
So okay,
it's an interesting point that she makes, though, that I didn't know about all these levels and there's a last time and all that kind of stuff, but Swedenborg doesn't seem to have been aware that was the audience he was addressing, if that is the case. But it's an interesting meeting point for two different philosophies on it.
The point is to not have to come back. Either way.
To not have to come back. Right.
Cool. All right. Hey, before we go on to the next question, I want to make an announcement for everybody watching. We got a show coming up. So on this Monday at 8 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to do a show about the mark of the beast. The 666. Everyone's talking about this. Is this something that's happening in the modern times? What is it going to be? Is it the mark on your forehead? What we're going to give you Swedenborg's clear, straightforward explanation of what that is. So tune in Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Check it out live. You can chat with us, or you can watch it after the fact. Okay, let's go to the next question. This is from Matt Bush, who asks, "What is the internal meaning of, quote, but I tell you that I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom." That's being said by Jesus. Everything Jesus says is a correspondence. So what does it mean?
Well, the short answer about wine is that it corresponds to truth, and drinking wine would be taking that in, making it our own, specifically the truth of heaven, spiritual truth, what is really going on about how the Lord is taking care of us and creates us and all that kind of stuff. So I tell you, I will not drink of this fruit. Oh yeah, and one of the passages I looked up talked about how it's about the Lord imparts this to us, but that the process of having this goodness and truth like renew us spiritually isn't fully accomplished until the afterlife, because we've got all the worldly stuff weighing us down and everything like that. So I wonder if that's about until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom. And that kind of applies to the last question too, is that there is still growth and change and evolution in the spiritual world. We're not a done deal in this world, but even without reincarnation, the thought is that you do get to keep growing, like Karin said.
Nicely said. Yeah, right. Wine, a symbol of purified truth, spiritual truth, because there's a purification process going on in there. And right, there's a way in which we can't fully absorb it until we're in my Father's kingdom. Until we're in heaven, and also in another sense, until we've raised up to a higher, more spiritual state of mind. Like we can't absorb, even in this world, we can absorb more truth, drink it in when we've opened up to a spiritual or heavenly state of mind instead of just an earthly state of mind. So that's what I found too, Kara.
It's just a cool, it's like a punctuation point on the end of something. It's like I'm not doing this again. It's like you're done third grade. Yeah, you're going to come back to school, but it's going to be fourth grade. There's going to be more homework, and there's going to be things just go like that. And it just always felt to me, I'm just tacking this on. I think what you both said was beautiful. And so sometimes the internal sense shows up in how it feels when you read it. And to me, it feels like, time for us to move up. Like it's God taking us to the next stage in whatever our journey is. And something about like you can't linger here. It's time to go forward.
Yeah, and it may too have been. I mean, Jesus said that right after the Last Supper, And so maybe he was also foreshadowing for his disciples, this is the last time we're going to do that, Passover meal together, friends, but we'll do it again on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and he is, and everything that happened in the Bible and with Jesus, and it's somehow our story too. That it's again, there's something that even though we're never going to have been around Jesus when he was crucified and then see him resurrected, but we see our own version of that. We have our own version, whether that is, I don't know, some kind of, we're just talking about like cherished beliefs people have, and how do they turn, and how do we understand God? Well, it's like, okay, I'm going away for a little while, but I'll be back here. You're going to find me up a level. Like Karin, you were saying, the truth is something good. You're going to find me up here,
Yeah. I was just thinking that it, in our own life, it can symbolize something like, to a certain extent, we can be having that Holy Supper with Jesus, with, like, we can be taking in, I'm realizing things more than I used to, and taking in goodness and truth. But there's a more vivid, and so like the Lord can get us to a certain stage in this life, but there's a next upgrade, like you're saying, Curtis, when we cross over and we can absorb even more vivid truth and more, potent, nourishing goodness. So there's more to come.
Yeah, everything progresses like that. So even in my school analogy, but then you're all the way done school, and you leave that and you enter a world where there's not just a curriculum and everything's set out and you have tests and you're going to go be a grown-up in some way, you're going to work or you're going to have kids or something. That same mind you built comes with you, but now it's a new it's a new game.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm here with you, but now we're going to do this the way the grown-ups do it. And I think as you advance, and even like when you're parenting young kids is totally different than as they start to grow up, or as you get like a promotion in your job. Things are always moving up like that,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see if there's any more questions. There are. This is question 5 from Drifting Echoes, who asks, and this is again, I'll read the whole thing through and then we'll get a summary. I've been wondering about this for ages, and sorry, it's a hard question. Oh no, what are we gonna? We'll do our best. How does the Eastern concept of enlightenment and surrendering to the present moment, as taught by figures like Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now, compare to Swedenborg's path of spiritual growth through regeneration? Specifically, is one path more heavenly and focused on divine providence, while the other is more foundational to our spiritual development here on earth? They both reach a similar depth. Do they both reach a similar depth? Or is one path deeper in spiritual significance? Might the difference lie in one focusing more on inner peace, while the other emphasizes a deeper process of spiritual transformation and preparation for heaven, also resulting in lots of inner peace while still here on earth? So let's talk about the East and the West, maybe, or you can pick up like a Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle or many other texts and see a spiritual path that seems different than Swedenborg. Which one is the good one?
Well, I don't know if I'll be able to articulate it well, but I feel like the two go beautifully together. Just starting with the way Swedenborg describes angelic life in heaven, things are happening and progressing all the time, and they're advancing and they're having things happen as if in time, though their time isn't fixed like ours. And yet they're so present. They're always in the present moment. And that's why they don't worry about the future or ruminate about the past. And yet Swedenborg also says their past and future are all contained in the present moment. So, anything we're like, if I'm just focusing on anything right now in the present moment, all my past is there in my, all my past experience is there in who I am in this moment, and everywhere I'm going is. So I feel like the two are not opposites at all. You can be present as the seconds are ticking along, like you can. So yeah, hard to articulate, but I feel like the more present we can be in our ongoing evolution, the more peace there is, because you're not sort of guessing and this and that. You're just like walking with the Lord from this moment to the next, and you're present in each moment. Does that make any sense? Do you have any other ways of saying it?
That's hard. That was my thought when Curtis was reading through it right now. It's just like, oh, it's just like good and truth and everything. They're both part of the thing. The concept of being in the present moment was something I didn't really tune into till I was an adult, and aided by that quote Karin was talking about, that a big part of what makes angels in heaven happy is that they're not worried about the present or the future. They're in the present moment. And that too, though, contributes so much to, say, the process of repentance, which is essential to our regeneration. If you're really present to what's going on in you and not distracting yourself by so-and-so, but really focusing on, what are my thoughts? What are my feelings? What are my actions right now? That is totally part of the regenerative process, and is part of the practice of the here and now. I don't know. I can hardly separate them myself in my mind.
Yes, yeah, I love it. You're thinking of Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, because I remember reading that, and it makes you realize how most of the time you're not present. You're sort of doing stuff, but your mind is elsewhere. It's not right here, and how much more effective each moment is when you're just like really focused on what's actually happening, not what might happen or what did happen, and you're again building on what did happen, and you're preparing for what will happen, but so it's not just a frozen thing, not in the progression forward. It's just like taking each of those moments and being in them.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, I've read Power of Now as well. I did a couple of meditation courses and have been exposed to some Buddhist theology. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on the let's say how she puts it, Eastern concept of enlightenment and surrendering to the present moment. So I'm not an expert in that. But you know who was? D.T. Suzuki, who's a gentleman who wrote a book. D.T. Suzuki, unless I'm gravely mistaken, is one of the primary figures in bringing Zen Buddhism to the West. And he wrote a book which is published by the Swedenborg Foundation called Swedenborg, Buddha of the North. And unless I'm very gravely mistaken, the thesis of that book is, hey, look at this. What seems like it starts out a million miles apart, Swedenborg's very Christian sounding, very intellectually focused, complex theology, and then the path of living in the present moment and quieting your mind. What seems to be completely different, incompatible things are actually very similar when you look at the deep underlying themes. And you can find analogs to this. I mean, Swedenborg will have his own language for it. He'll talk about what it is to be nothing in his Journal of Spiritual Experiences, which is essentially, if you realize that all goodness comes from God and all evil comes from hell, and that you are just a vessel and that lets in either one, then the power of evil doesn't have power over you. This is very much like, okay, close your eyes and imagine your mind is like a field. The next thought that comes through, don't grab onto it, just let it go, which is what you're taught over and over to do in meditation. Swedenborg's whole exploration of and discovering that there's a whole spiritual world influences your thoughts and feelings that's not you, and that a lot of it you can just get rid of because it's keeping you away from goodness and truth. To me, there's endless compatibility in there, and that you don't see it because there's so much material and so many factoids that he has. But if you study the state that he says that angels are in and what it's like to be in the stream of providence, it sounds a lot like being in the present moment and being at peace with what is. I don't know about the this so Eastern type path enough to know how it deals with things like, let's say you have you steal things, or you rage against people, or you cheat on your spouse. I don't know how it would deal with that. Swedenborg has a system for that, but there's so much overlap. I would say that really, like, the clearing the mind and living the present moment, it's just diving into and really getting to know and do something that is described in Swedenborg. So you could read Swedenborg for a long time and not have mastered a basic thing like, be in the present moment, so that in that way the Eastern path can be a really useful tool that it's hard to get out of reading Swedenborg. But it's kind of like that's getting you great at, it's like a book about the history and theory of basketball if Swedenborg versus here's a dribbling drill that's going to really get your ball handling good.
Nice comparison. Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
Just that I think of being present as being just really awake and aware. I think it was in Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth or something. He said, your purpose in life is to wake up. And I feel like in every moment is just like, don't sleepwalk through things. Like being present is being awake in each moment. He
says, I mean, the central teaching of the book Divine Providence and his concept of divine providence is that human prudence is nothing. Yeah. Divine providence is everything. So what that means is you think that your life is going the way it is because you figure it out and plot it out and strategize and plan and act. But actually, that's not what's happening. Divine providence is what's going on. And I just lines pop into my mind of the people who are in the stream of providence are, quote, given every moment what to think. And that innocence is something that you're supposed to approach and do with your whole heart. And innocence is a state of being willing to be led by the Lord. So you don't know what all these things point toward a very in the present, spontaneous, trusting existence, which I think is a lot like what you're trying to get by this power of the present moment stuff as well. Okay, let's do another one. This is, let's just give the people what they want. This is question number 6. We're making great time. We got 8 questions. We're going to do it. Jamie asks, given Swedenborg's extensive visitations and communications with angels and celestials, has anyone contacted you, or have you heard of anyone who has channeled or felt they have communicated with Swedenborg from heaven?
Mm-hmm.
I got to say that I gave this person an answer in writing.
Okay.
Earlier, when it didn't happen last month. So you guys take it away.
Because you already know the answer, so you're going to see if we get it right.
That is to say, I responded to her question. Yeah. I'm not sure it's an answer.
Oh man, this stakes are high. I do have some thoughts. Karin, do you want to go first?
You can start.
Okay. Certainly, there have been people have claimed to have talked to Swedenborg in the afterlife quite a lot. I always have trouble remembering his name. I think it's Allan Kardec that I'm thinking of, who wrote the Spirits book. I was in the 1800s, but is not as lengthy as Swedenborg's, but is a little like Swedenborg's Journal of Spiritual Experiences, where this is a guy who could see and talk to spirits a lot and recorded what he had. And he has a little section in there about Swedenborg, and that he met Swedenborg and Swedenborg said some things to him. Right now, there's a woman named Suzanne Gleesman, who's a popular medium. You can find her on YouTube all over the place. And she says that Swedenborg is part of the group of people that communicate with her. I've many times been at conferences and had people say, like, oh, Swedenborg is around you right now as you're saying this stuff that you're saying. So it's all there, and I don't know what to make of any of it. Often, I've heard many people claim to have talked to Swedenborg. Often what they say doesn't really sound like what Swedenborg would say, because I know so fully. A couple of times, a red flag is like when someone says, I talked to Swedenborg, you don't have to listen to it. He says, you don't have to listen to my books because now I've evolved beyond that. I don't know, man. He was he was already a citizen of the afterlife. I don't think he had a huge awakening after moving there. That's my own humble opinion. I haven't yet found anything where I really felt like, oh, this is Swedenborg part 2. But it could be that it's there and I just don't realize it.
Yeah, I feel the same. I've definitely had people give me links to different people's writings who talk to Swedenborg. When I started reading, and this Swedenborg was going on and on about how masturbation is not evil. And I thought, I don't know that would be something Swedenborg would, I don't know. It just seemed very earthly.
Yeah.
I just like, so two things. Yeah, I haven't been really hooked by anything in particular, but like you say, Curtis, we can't know. So we can't tell anybody else what they did or did not experience. But one thing that strikes me is that Swedenborg was very adamant when he was writing his books and things about like that we should not be taught by spirits and angels, especially while we're on earth. I mean, I think when you cross over, you get these angel teachers and things. But while we're on earth, especially, we need to go to the word or to our own experience or within and seek the Lord. And, you know, things we read from other people can help us, give us some thoughts to do that journey, including the books Swedenborg wrote. But it just doesn't seem to me like he would then be trying to teach people on earth.
Yeah, right. And we did, and I'm not trying to say, let's say so far, I don't feel like I've come across Swedenborg the sequel. That doesn't necessarily, I'm not even trying to say that the people who are saying they're talking to Swedenborg aren't having those experiences.
Yeah.
But from what I know of the spiritual world, it's, you know, there's a lot of, like right now, if you got a text message from somebody who said, hey, it's me. I'm trying to think of like who's somebody that's unbelievable that you would tell. Hey, this is Taylor Swift. How's it going? Here's a picture of me, and my profile says Taylor Swift. It's me. My thought is like, that's an impersonation. That's not actually Taylor Swift. So in the spiritual world, it's just like it's getting to be here. There's a lot of impersonation, and people just kind of slipping into what you would expect. So it could well be, you know, that Swedenborg is known to some kind of extent in the afterlife, and people will kind of tell people they are him for credibility or whatever. So I'm not saying people haven't had those experiences.
Yeah.
And it could be that Swedenborg is in one of those, but so far I haven't found anything that hits like the originals do.
Yes, right. There's a lot of impersonation. Swedenborg himself had to navigate that in his diary of spiritual experiences, him trying to figure out this Bible character that's coming to me. Is this really this person? Or because he was starting to learn that like people can pretend to be other people on the level of the world of spirits. Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of, there's a time in his Journal of Spiritual Experiences when there are evil spirits who are impersonating him and going and harming other spirits around.
Yes.
And so that when he wakes up, the spirits around are like, why were you doing that to us? And he says, I wasn't. That was these sirens pretending to be me. So I'm just saying, you gotta be a little, I don't know, street smart or something, but it could really be out there. So.
Yep. Again, people have to just use your own discernment.
Yeah, that's right.
By their fruits, you'll know.
Okay. Question number 7. Here we go. Sue Andrews asks, when Swedenborg talks about the last judgment, does he refer to the last one that happened, or does he mean the last one that will ever happen? I've thought of it as the last one that happened, presuming there will be more in the eternity to come.
My understanding, because he does say that there have been 2 last judgments before, and he calls them last judgments at the end of 2 previous spiritual eras. Calls them last judgments because they're like a big resorting. But my understanding is he's indicating that this most recent one that happened, that he witnessed, is the last judgment. And remember, this is just like, it doesn't mean there's not continual, still evolving and learning and purification, but a last judgment is we almost lost the ability to choose goodness, and a huge revamp had to happen on the level of the spiritual world. And it seemed it seems like when he talks about the new church era, you know, the new spiritual era we're moving into, that it is the final one, and there won't need to be any more last judgments. And one way I can think of it is like, if all of this is about a relationship with God, there's a point you can get to in a relationship where, you know, you're not gonna exit this relationship. It's clear to you, like you're in, and you can continue to learn more about this other person, you know, but you're not gonna leave. That it's maybe not the best example, but that's one way I was thinking of it, because these churches are relationships between humanity and God. And it seems like the last judgment that happened opened up enough for us to work with going forward, where there won't have to be a total reordering anymore. We can continue to better recognize evil, turn away from it, choose good based on the last reordering. So that's just my impression. I wonder what you guys think. But I do want to just add, but we each go through our own individual last judgment. So those keep going for everybody.
Yes, exactly. Everybody gets their own personal, quote unquote, last judgment, which I think of as just when you're in the world of spirits and getting yourself sorted out.
Yeah.
And then where does your heart take you to live for eternity? I feel like in a couple shows ago, Curtis, you were talking about this last judgment thing about, like, well, it was the last one that happened, but
Yeah,
you know, it's never going to happen again.
yeah. Thanks, Lucas, we just saw Lucas became a YouTube member. Appreciate it, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could never guarantee that it's the last, because people still have free will. So, hey, this before we get to our last question here, speaking of last somethings, if you want to make a donation to support the Swedenborg Foundation, you can do so. We have a handy link that'll take you right to make this process really simple. I think it's up there. All that goes to us. We're not for profit, so we're one of very few organizations in the world that are working to keep Swedenborg's books alive. Like, we translate them, we republish them, and we get the word out about them. So if you want to support that effort, go to swedenborg.com/livegive. Thanks to everyone who has and does. Final question. Kathy asks, since love, wisdom, and use, or good, truth, and use, are all necessary for any to be complete and real, it has struck me that in the Lord's Prayer, there are just two all the way through until the end, with thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. I've been wondering a bit about this. Any thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess thinking that there's three there, kingdom, power, and the glory forever. It's like love, wisdom.
I have a thought.
Okay.
It's just that I had never thought about it before. But then I went like, how does that go? And I started saying the Lord's Prayer to myself. And to me, at least the first two sentences do have three parts to me. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. You know, so that could be good, truth, like use, that our name is how we affect people. Thy kingdom come, thy will, the kingdom, the will, that's truth and good. As in heaven, so upon the earth, the usefulness of how all of us on earth get all that. I stopped there, but that's what came to me. Like, interesting thing to think about.
So yeah, is it couplets or triplets? Because I was thinking, oh yeah, right. Kingdom come, will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. But you're right. You can split it up there.
Mm-hmm.
Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors.
Yeah.
Lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from evil. That's two. Good question.
Yeah.
I love that Kathy thinks in terms of these pairs, because Swedenborg does talk about there's always these pairs in Bible scripture that has to do with the goodness and the truth side of things. But yeah, I think there's a lot of use in there. I was looking at what would be action, because use is just about doing. It's action that has an effect. And so hallowed be thy name, there is some use. that another way to say that is your name must be kept holy, your qualities. So we have to be doing something to hold that as holy, the qualities that of the Lord. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. That doesn't happen without useful action on our part, as well as in heaven, so upon the earth. We have to be doing useful things. As we forgive our debtors, we have to we have to do the things that are useful for achieving forgiveness. Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. That has to do with allowing the Lord, doing the repentance process, which is very useful thing to do because it allows the Lord to purify our spirits. So I think it's just mixed in there, and it's interesting. You could group the things in different ways, but I think it's all in there: the truth, the goodness, and the usefulness.
Amen.
Great questions, everybody.
Yeah.
That was fun. Karin and Kara, getting to talk through those with you. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. And again, there's that link that we just showed up there. So in the description, swedenborg.com/livegive if you want to support what we're doing. All of you who have supported and become members, we're going to do right now a little after party. We're going to go into a video chat call, and we'll get to hear what you thought about all this. So we'll go there. And to everyone who watched, thanks for thinking about the Swedenborg stuff and trying to figure it out with us.
Yeah, thank you. Great questions. Hope it sparked thoughts of your own. Bye.
Thanks.